Welcome to the Oscoda Township regular board meeting, September 10th, 2018. Let's begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Mr. Cummings.
Here.
Ms. McGuire.
Here.
Mr. Gaske.
Here.
Mr. Palmer.
Here.
Mr. Nordine here. Mr. Byer.
Here.
Mr. Weed.
Here. Agenda additions. Does anybody have anything? Okay, we had one item we were going to put on for the USDA request for reimbursement. There's some questions regarding that, so we will use that for the next meeting. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
I'll move that we adopt the agenda as presented.
Support.
Motion by Ms. McGuire, support by Mr. Gajewski. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The agenda is set. Next is the public hearing for the truth in taxation. We need a motion to enter public hearing.
So moved.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Byer, support by Ms. McGuire. Roll call.
Mr. Byer.
Yes.
Mr. Cummings.
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Palmer.
Yes.
Mr. Gaske.
Yes.
Ms. McGuire.
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. We are now in the public hearing. Let's start off.
Okay, good evening. My name's Nancy Schwickert. I'm the assessor for Oscoda Township. The purpose of a truth in taxation hearing is whenever the taxable values increase, in order for the government entity to collect additional revenues off of that increase, you have to have a hearing to let the public know that you will be getting additional monies. The mechanism is that your millage rate will be reduced to ensure that you only collect the same dollar amount that you collected last year unless you have this hearing and adopt a resolution to levy the same millage that you're allowed under the maximum of, for us, it would be 4.6908. Without this hearing, the millage will automatically be rolled back to a 4.6509. Some of the statistics of this, for a $100,000 house, this levying the maximum millage authorized would increase the tax bill by $1.99. Is there any questions?
Any comments from the audience? All right. Anything further from the board? Then I need a motion to exit the public hearing.
Report.
Motion by Mr. Cummings, support by Mr. Gajewski. Roll call.
Mr. Gaske.
Yes.
Ms. McGuire.
Yes.
Mr. Byer.
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Palmer.
Yes.
Mr. Cummings. Mr. Weed.
Yes, we are now out of the public hearing. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Now we are into the public comments. For this first one, a card needs to be filled out and submitted to the superintendent. There is a 4-minute time limit, and when you come up, please introduce yourself. Do we have any cards?
We do. We have Joe Maxwell about the DDA.
Thank you. I'm Joe Maxwell, head of the DDA. We've got a couple other DDA members here as well. First of all, I'd like to say that there's been a lot of discussion in joint meetings between the DDA and the Township Board, and we're thankful for those. I wish everybody could have been there for all of them, and we've had quite a few individual discussions with board members as well. However, there's a couple things I'd like to point out. One of them is in the research that I've done, and that's quite extensive. I have not been able to find another DDA that's incorporated that is anywhere near our size, or even much larger, unless it's in a huge city. For example, Detroit. Most of them the Township Board exerts its control by two things. One, they approve the budget for the year, and of course, any change in that budget has to be approved by the Township Board if the budget is changed. And then the Township Board also approves the members of the DDA. And then I was asked to read this by our secretary, who is not here. She's gone. At the last joint meeting between the DDA and the Township Board, each DDA member was asked how they would like to see the DDA structured. The majority of DDA members wanted to keep the structure the same, with the DDA being a board under the Oscoda Township umbrella, not unlike the Planning Commission. It was agreed that the bylaws would need to be updated, and that is in progress right as we speak. We have a two-person committee working on that. And according to what we should do, they should be updated at least once a year and reviewed twice a year. And that there would need to be resolutions adopted of what DDA items would need Township Board approval. And I've already referred to that, and which would not. It is felt that the DDA would be better able to serve the downtown, or the whole area that the DDA serves, with the support and coordinated efforts with the Township. That's all I got to say.
Thank you. Do we have any other cards?
No.
All right, for the consent agenda, are there any questions regarding the two work session minutes, regular meeting minutes, special meeting minutes, another work session minute, and another special meeting minutes? 6 total meetings for the month.
Question on the meeting we had for the 28th. It relates to comments in there about the DDA bill payments. It didn't list the amounts that were approved. And that'll go to another question I have when it comes to the payment of bills. So I just wanted to-
Okay, August 28th is a special board meeting
Yeah, with the DDA.
with the DDA. Okay.
I remember there was discussion by the DDA in terms of paying several
Ah.
bills.
Yes, I did not enter those. My thought was that the DDA's minutes would reflect those. I stuck to matters of our board and summarily, address the DDA. I could certainly, if this board wanted to, go back and add those, but that's the intent.
The reason I bring that up is I went to review that as it relates to the question I have when it comes to the payment of bills. And I guess in my advanced age, I can't remember what happens at certain times, and I can't remember. It seems to me there was a problem that he had with paying one of the bills, that being the attorney bill. I don't remember if that was approved, and I don't believe it was.
My recollection was after a lot of discussion,
After discussion.
it was two separate motions in the second one.
Okay.
And we could check the DDA bill, minutes as well.
Any comments regarding the payment of bills, which there is actually a reduction of $1,050. So the total will be $250,336.18. Any comments regarding the payment of bills for the DDA, $3,800 for the lighthouse, and $30 to record the notice of federal interest?
This brings me right. This is my basic question about the payment of bills for the DDA. It brought to my attention, and it answered the question that all of the bills have been paid that we've approved so far. But my question is, are we doing this backwards? In other words, should the bills be approved by the DDA first and then brought to this board for approval? Because you mentioned there was some discrepancy with the DDA as to which bills they wanted to pay at our last meeting. And it would seem to me that if we approve a certain amount to be paid and the DDA does not approve that amount, then we could, I don't know how we responsible for, and it could be, you know, late fees or whatever. So I'm just wondering if we should do this in reverse, where the DDA would receive the bills first, approve them on their end, and then it comes to this board for final approval.
It could be 2 or 3 weeks behind. By wait for them to approve it and then bring it to us, it could be a month.
Can I answer the question, though? Sure. Aaron?
Yes.
Can I answer?
Go ahead.
We had a special meeting with the DDA last week.
Right.
And that was to pass the lighthouse bill up to $4,000. And it actually, because we were under the impression it was going to be $4,000. And we had a special meeting and it was unanimous to pass the $3,800. Okay, so the DDA has passed that bill.
Okay, I'm talking about the DDA bills in general. Because what we've been doing is we've been passing them and then waiting for the DDA to approve them afterwards. What brought this to my concern was the question that you had at the August 28th meeting, where you were questioning whether or not you wanted to pay the attorney fees. And what was said was that they were paid. Well, what I'm getting at is that if you had decided that the DDA wasn't responsible for that bill, then how would this board know that that bill is outstanding?
That was a joint meeting.
Well, that one was, but, I mean, in general, it seems to me a better process to submit the bills to the DDA, and then you approve them, and then they come here for final approval.
I mean, I totally get what you're saying. It makes a lot of sense to me, but I get the impression that there's comments that ought to be made out here, so maybe we should ask, or give them an opportunity to speak.
I think that we're getting to the point where we can remove this requirement. The Finance Committee has served their function. I think we found more of where we are at in reality here. That would probably be the point where we no longer need to do that.
So
Do you want me to go over
from
each
this
and
point forward, the DDA
or stay
can
with
approve
Palmer?
their own bills, and they
There may be some limitations. We will probably discuss that later when it comes to the resolution portion of it.
okay, that's fine.
I think we got a couple of details to work out, but probably something to consider at the next meeting.
Okay, so are we going to discuss this topic now, or at some point down the road? I don't quite understand what I'm doing now.
Well, and the only other thing I wanted to point out, as far as the 3,800, and I don't have a problem with the 3,800, whatever work needs to be done on the weekends, or whatever additional work needs to be done to have it done right. The only thing I wanted to point out, I mentioned in the work session Friday, was that in Mr. Schaefer working up the additional appropriations budget for the DDA, he had budgeted in at $3,100. So, but there is an $8,000 contingency, which covers that additional $700. But just to point out that with this additional appropriation, we're already eating into that contingency. This was just since August 2nd, this was done, so we're already eating into that. I mean, it's, you know, it should be fine, I would hope, for the rest of the year, but just to point out that, you know, the 3,800, what we budgeted in that appropriation, 3,100. That was all.
So anything beyond this bill here, we can discuss at the resolution portion of the agenda. Does that work?
Sure.
On another topic, Aaron, we're going over the consent agenda. I would just like to thank the 5 board members that supported my motion to, you know, a mild way, stand up to the Air Force regarding the advanced charging of the GAC plant. Worked pretty good. And I'm glad to see us not cave into them on every issue. So, thank you.
Okay, any other comments on the bills? All right, under reports, we have consent reports. We have the all the letters that were submitted to us at our last special meeting regarding the Air Force GAC plant. I do think that the motion that Mr. Byer made was very successful in getting this accomplished. We've received another letter since then that we will have in the next board packet that supports the routine payments for the use of our infrastructure. So any comments regarding these reports? Okay, then I need a motion for the consent agenda.
I move we accept the consent agenda as it's presented.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Byer, support by Mr. Cummings. Roll call?
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
That is with the correction to the amount of bills to be paid, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Gasky,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Next, subcommittee reports and project updates. Last week, there was a Senator Peters' office, a couple reps from there came to visit Oscoda, and they wanted to get an idea of the contamination in our area. So we showed them around, and I believe they definitely got a feel for the breadth of the contamination, and especially when the smell from the outflow pipe went up their nose. I think that really solidified the issue we've got here. So they were going to take the information back to the EPA hearings that in DC that they're going to have. Are there any other project updates or some subcommittee reports? All right, then under the regular reports. First is requested 2018 appropriations increase for DDA Fund 248.
All right, so the DDA is requesting Township Board approval to increase 2018 appropriations for DDA Fund 248. Your packet contains the Fund 248 analysis that provides supporting documentation associated with the proposed 2018 appropriations increase of $109,551.55. And your packet also contains the meeting minutes from the August 14th DDA meeting where the 2018 appropriation increase was approved by the DDA board.
Comments? Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion that we approve the appropriation increase of $109,511.55 for the DDAs for the remainder of 2018.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Gajewski, support by Mr. Byer. Roll call?
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Gasky,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Next, ECWAG application for federal assistance.
All right, we have Mr. Freeman from Rowe Engineering in attendance this evening, in case anybody has any follow-up questions here. But the Township Board was provided with several alternatives to determine the next steps associated with the Emergency and Imminent Community Water Assistance Grant, or ECWAG, to secure the $1 million in federal funding associated with Phase 2 of the Township's water main extensions planned for 2019. So in the packet, you have the information from Mr. Freeman, as including an overview of the funding, and the discussion with the three alternatives for the Township Board to consider. In there, you also have the ECWAG Form 424 application for federal assistance, as well as a signed letter to Mr. Troy Shank with the USDA.
Come up to the podium in case we have any questions. Board have any comments?
I have one question. Maybe it's just a misprint on the budget information construction programs. Where it lists all the cost classifications.
Is this the form you're? No? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. And I apologize for that form in the electronic version. When you go in to try to input the information, for whatever reason, the form that I was provided by USDA was not compatible. It wouldn't carry the information through. So I went through and tried to carry the information through by hand. So if I made a mistake there, that's possible that's what that is. So.
This in this column.
Yes,
should not
that's
be there.
correct. That should be 0. Yes, I apologize for that, and I have made those corrections on there. So, and I've created a budget sheet depending on what the board's decision tonight is. I've made a separate budget sheet for whichever alternative that you choose to proceed with.
So we're looking at the options of, we go full force with the Phase 2 project, encompassing the portion of Loud Drive, Woodland, and a small section of Interlake, at a total cost of $1.7 million, of which $1 million of that is the USDA EQUAG grant, another $200,000 from the amount of money the state has already gotten for us for the water project, which leaves the $500,000 gap that can either be filled, that we can spend the next 6 months trying to find where we can get the money. Hopefully the state will fund that, or we can get a USDA loan to cover that $500,000, and then hopefully in the meantime we can get the state to fill in that gap. We want this to be as little, or at least I do, I want this to be as little burden on the homeowner as possible. Or does everybody else agree with that? Speak for anybody.
I do.
I agree with that. Have you had many people that have said they want to hook up to the water main once it's there?
I have not gotten a response from Loud Drive. The question hasn't been asked to each homeowner. As far as the Phase 1 project, right now I only have one homeowner who does not want to connect.
And I spoke to a homeowner on Bennett and Dam Road. Phase 1 has just been completed, and they were gonna have theirs, he was asking me about the reimbursement. He wants to have his done this fall. And I said, well, I can't guarantee that the funds will be available. We haven't worked that details out on the money. The money's coming, but we don't have it yet, so we can't verify. He said, I don't care. I want municipal water, and I want it as soon as I can get it hooked up here. So I said, if I have to pay for it, I'll pay for it. If I can get reimbursed later on, he said, that's gravy, but they wanted it hooked up. So I think the majority of people will want to hook up to this, especially if they don't have to foot the bill for tying it into their house. And I think that's reasonable. I don't think people should.
Yeah, most of the feedback I've gotten from Bannock and Dam Road is that they do want water. They do want municipal water.
One additional item I actually found out today, actually Friday about, and then try to get some more information on it today. Michigan Economic Development Corporation will have some type of grant program put out probably later this fall or maybe early 2019. More likely they do it in the fall. And those grants, this type of infrastructure project would be eligible for that type of grant. And it's 100% grant. There's no local match or anything like that on it. So that is, we're looking into it. We were hoping to get an answer from the individual at MEDC to give us kind of a parameter of when this would be coming out and what type of grant that it would be called. In the past, they've been called ICE grants. They've been called a variety of things. They don't know exactly what it will be called this fall, but we have tapped into that individual, and as soon as they have word on that, they will let us know. What that would entail is another application process. There's a letter of intent that needs to be filed, but it's pretty straightforward and a little less painful than some of the other traditional grant and loan programs that you have to go through. So we're keeping an eye on that. And in the past, depending on their funding, those grants have been in the $1 million or greater. There's really been no really hard cap on those. And they allow you to basically cover all of your expenses. So engineering expenses, potentially if, more water service connections and issues like that, so.
So regarding this first option here for covering the whole project, we have that leave the 500,000 hanging or go for the USDA loan and still look for that filling the gap. I've already been in touch with Senator Stamas's office and Sue Aller for the state working to get us the money. Otherwise, the other options are scaling back the project. Removing like Woodland Drive or not funding the service leads, but I would rather we do the
One other item is that talking to Troy Shank and then his director, Chris Maxwell in Lansing, is that irregardless of the township's decision tonight moving forward with the application process, you are not tied in, committed to it, whatever portion that would be your commitment or another funding source or whatever, until actually loan closing. So there's this isn't a final 100% commitment and no turning back. If we come up with another game plan later on, you still have the ability to make changes or whatever up until that actual closing of either the loan or the grant.
That's great. I really appreciate the information. Yeah. I think
I
makes a lot of sense.
personally would like to see us go ahead with the full program that we've been talking about all along. Since time is short, we have to have this in by the end of September. I would hate to see us, do anything that would jeopardize the $1 million that
Yeah.
what the plan requires.
Yeah.
It means for the time being that the township steps up and says, well, we'll cover one way or another the other 500,000, and hopefully we can come up with some money so the township doesn't have to fund that or take out a loan to cover that. But I personally would like to see us go ahead with the option one and that's what we've been talking about with all the residents right along to make that happen.
For all the work this board has done, for all the work of the RAB, for the work of the NOW group, it would make no sense to do anything but one, in my opinion.
So, not scaling back the project, are we looking at filing for the $1 million grant only, or the $1 million grant and the $500,000 loan?
Both.
And then still look for other options to cover that.
Right. Okay. Any other comments?
Did we have time to look into the more current meters for the new water systems or expansion? The ones that we drive by instead of walking house to house?
We don't have a singled out price quote per meter. What we have is a holistic to replace the whole type of system kind of quote. And obviously that was, when that quote was obtained, it was to not do the entire system in a year. It was to kind of phase in over 3 years. Over 3 years, the meters that you could drive by. So I don't have the individualized cost of what it would be for each one of those houses. What I am trying to look into is, obviously you still need the baseline equipment to drive by, and I don't have that isolated.
That's something we're going to look into.
We can look into that. The only other comment I'd like to make is that $500,000 gap. I think it would be an opportunity to be able to formally request that this board sends a letter to the Air Force requesting them to make up that $500,000 difference. So we can at least document that we tried to obtain and fill the gap by requesting this $500,000 or whatever the project shortage is going to be from the Air Force.
Along that avenue, based on our previous discussions, you had brought that up, and I just did the history on it, has the local public health department issued to the Air Force Base any documents concerning the contamination or anything like that, as far as you know?
I don't know everything they've submitted to them.
Because along with that request, that would be to follow up with the public health department to see if they have, and if they haven't, they will or should issue a public health notice directly to the Air Force Base or to the Air Force. That way, it would back up the township's request, and it would also substantiate, obviously, all the documentation that the MDEQ is pulling together as far as how the plume is moving and the area of influence that they say should have an alternate water source. So,
Thank you for your help.
no problem.
All right, then I make a motion that the township go ahead and secure the $1 million USDA EQUAG grant and the $500,000 low-interest rural development loan for the Phase 2 water main extension.
Support.
And in doing this, we should be able to, are we shooting for 2019 construction? Is that?
I would recommend that right now. You can still back off, on that decision. Right now, the time frame would to have everything in place in the January, February time frame, and we should know within the next month or two how it's tracking. So again, you could back off and hold off. You wouldn't jeopardize your funding. It would if at the time it would buy you a little bit more time to secure other funding, but you can back off and hold off for a 2020 construction if the township would like to at that time, just depending on how things are shaking out
I ask because I want to be as wise as possible and secure as much funding as we can, but I want to do whatever we can to make it 2019 construction season. That's good news, very good news from where I sit.
All right, motion by Mr. Weed, support by Mr. Byer. Roll call?
Mr. Gasky,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Thank
I'll
you
just
very much.
I'll just summarize the schedule. So by the end of this week, I'll get signatures tonight if I can on the applications, or as soon as I can. But the game plan would be to get those applications in for the $1 million by this coming Friday, and then we will follow up with the rest of the program applications by the end of the month. So, and again, working directly with Troy Shank and Chris Maxwell on that. So,
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
thank you.
All right, next is the it's not a pure Michigan advertisement, it's actually what's the name of the company?
It's an invoice from the Harbor House publisher.
Advertisement in the Harbor House magazine.
All right. So, based on the work session last Friday, what I understand is that the township has historically paid for a full-page advertisement on the back cover of the 29th or annual Chamber of Commerce directory. And so that is placed at rest stops and areas of interest for hard copies for any potential tourists to be able to pick up. So this is not the Pure Michigan magazine. It has the Pure Michigan logo on the back of that, but basically the Harbor House invoice is for the Chamber of Commerce annual directory, is what this is for. So anything over the $2,000 obviously requires the township board approval.
Any comments?
Do you know how many years we've been doing this in this publication? Probably difficult for you to know.
I don't know that.
I'm just curious if we have any feedback if this is what kind of effect we've gotten for our money over the years. Seems like an awful lot of money to spend.
Publish between 10 and 15,000 publications a year that get distributed. It's quite a few magazines.
Did we receive any data from Harbor House that supports the effectiveness of this ad?
No.
Do we have anything from the Chamber of Commerce that tells us what kind of measurable effectiveness this ad has had?
I don't know.
Doesn't this also cover our membership to the chamber also?
This covers our annual membership to the chamber?
With this, it's like included with this, I believe so.
I believe so it is
Don't
too.
hold me to that, but I think I remember that conversation a few years ago.
I don't, all I have is this from the Harbor House publishers. I don't have anything from Rose or the chamber that would say this covers our annual dues or membership. I can ask.
Yeah.
Do you know
I'll
what
call
the dues are for us if we don't do this advertising?
Nope.
Does anybody recall having done this in the past? Okay, we
Oh, yeah,
have.
we've done this, yeah. That's why, something like that. I'll look into the other, don't take that as whatever.
Yeah, it's okay, it's fine. I don't recall.
I don't think you're ever gonna get a report saying, boy, I really like the back cover of that publication. But if the tourist business is increasing, had a good year, that's about as close, I think, as we're gonna get, that perhaps we have contributed to that. Martin, you're our Chamber of Commerce guy. Do they ever have a meeting where they just kind of look at the past year, tourist year, and decide where it stands compared to other years?
I guess I can't answer that truly, faithfully, but I know we've had meetings previously on this, but I don't remember anything coming out of it. But I took notice of this application. There's no time frame on it. I don't know when this is due. If we want to talk to the chamber, we want to talk to Harbor House for more information. There's no time frame on this. I was just looking at it. We might have 30, 60 days to find information out.
I would be interested to know what that connection is between the Chamber of Commerce membership and Harbor House. I don't quite understand what that connection would be.
They publish this, and I know the chamber does get some revenue from it for further advertisement within the the chamber area, statewide. But I can't say how much. I don't have no idea. I know they get something out of it. Not all $2,400 or $2,545 goes to Harbor House. Some gets returned to the chamber.
That would put this in a little different perspective for me anyway, than if we knew exactly what was going down.
If we knew the difference between what the dues are at the chamber and then what this ad is, because if there's a big enough difference in there, I would be more in favor of having the money put into something such as the new township website to advertise Oscoda than into a magazine ad, which we don't know its effectiveness. I don't pick up paper products hardly ever anymore, so I don't know how many people still are. I haven't cracked open a phone book in 8 years.
Can I say something? I advertise in that for our local business. Last year a year ago was the best July we ever had. This year was the beat it. It was the best July we ever had. August was our third best, and so far September is the best one we've ever had. We've advertised in that for quite a few years now through the chamber, and it used to be that the guys who did it distributed themselves at the all the intakes to the state of Michigan, the closest ones to the border, the Indiana and Ohio border. They used to take them there, and over to Clare and all the rest areas in the state. Now it's done for them.
But can you attribute that advertising to your business?
Not directly that. All I know is we sold over 1,000 T-shirts saying Oscoda was South America.
Right, so is our increase in tourism, is that
It's partly
due
because of the
naturally,
thing.
or
Well,
is?
can I ask,
is
do
that
you
because
pay
of
for an
that?
ad separately?
Yes.
You pay it for yourself?
Yes, I pay for an ad ourselves, a separate ad. You know. But mostly the whole thing, they do a lot of things, if you've ever seen one,
It's nice.
they advertise the community. There's a lot of articles about the community, pictures of the community, pictures of the Sabo River, stuff like that, that's in the community. That's what's advertised there. And then there's a list of people like us, businesses, also advertised. And if you go to the, I volunteered at the chamber last fall, and there were a lot of people came in, and that's what they're doing. They're picking up paper. You think that in this day and age, people wouldn't do that, but they were picking up paper.
I do
Looking for
believe,
things to do.
I do believe there's an electronic version, something, and it might have returnable data as well as that, or trackable. Don't know.
The web address is on the application.
90% of the people walk in the chamber, pick up paper. That I can attest to. I've seen a lot of people come in.
But they're already here.
Yeah.
Is
They
this
take
effective
every
for getting
magazine
people
on that
elsewhere in the
display.
state to here?
We take every magazine on that display, and you ask them where they got it off the internet. Or the website. E-blast. They come in and pick up paper.
I guess the first thing I wanted to comment on is the point about the township website being on the horizon. We've talked about it. It's been part of our strategic planning for a couple of years now, a couple meetings. And I guess my first thought is, while the website is something I definitely believe we need, I don't think that it is a substitute or replacement for marketing and advertising in general as a point. I think that we definitely need to have a marketing plan, how we're going to get our good deeds well known by the public and by people who don't live just in our town, but elsewhere, so that they find Oscoda interesting and want to come here. But as a point, I think we need to probably think of both, and I don't know, in my mind, I look at $2,500. It's a lot of money, yes. When we probably get down the road to look at a website, it's going to be, maybe in a $6,000, $7,000 range for a website, and with some social media to go with it. So if that's the case, is it just going to be that? I would say no. I would say it's got to be a more than one prong solution here. It's just my take. Just my take. So I like the idea that we're stopping as a board to think about whether or not we want to spend the money because we have other bills, other things that are projects that will help further the community and our purpose here as Oscoda Township Board. But I'm also wondering if this isn't also just a good deal. This is something to get out in people's hands, and it may be old-fashioned, but Yeah, I was gonna say, I can't say that it doesn't help.
I don't, like I said, I'm repeating here, I don't think you're ever gonna get some way that you can get a statement saying, boy, we came to Oscoda because of that magazine.
Right.
You're not ever gonna get that. But if you, like Joe's comments about having a good year, and I've heard that from other business people around. I don't know if Rhonda wants to kick in or not, but you know, it's got to be something. And we're in competition with a really beautiful tourist town to the south of us. I think this is not the time to pull back and try to save $2,000. You know, the Tawises are. I noticed just in the last weekend, I felt bad for Harrisville and their craft fair. Because in Tawas City, they had a craft fair that was just crawling with people. And I wonder how many people got siphoned off, or half their money, their disposable income for that kind of thing went to Tawas, and they didn't make it up to Harrisville. Or they made it up to Harrisville with half the money that they had to spend it. Things like that. I don't think we should back off. They're tough customers down there, and we need to keep fighting.
Well, I would just relate that, not this past spring, but in 2017, I had a call from a resident who had family staying out at Old Orchard Park, and they're looking for things to do. And the store out there in the office had no materials in there early on. And he says, how come they don't have some of the publication things that are at the chamber office? So I called the chamber and they said, well, we've been meeting to take some stuff out there, but we've been shorthanded. Now, this was in 2017. They were shorthanded. So I drove down there and they gave me 2 boxes. I took some of everything they had on the shelf, 2 boxes worth of stuff, and took it out to Old Orchard Park. And I said, now, if this gets gone, call me and I'll go bring some more. Well, I went out there a month later, and there was still some publications in the racks, but a lot of it was gone. People had come in there and taken a lot of the information that was there. So I know the younger people, everything is on their phone that they do. It's just, but I see in this advertisement does have our website. So,
Yeah, there's a link there.
we've been talking about projects and ways to market Oscoda. I guess this will be one of them.
All right, so there were a lot of questions here, so is there a motion to postpone this for further information, or do we have a motion to accept or deny, or what?
I'd like to make a motion that we go ahead with the participation in the Harbor House back cover issue. Price being $2,545.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Byers, support by Mr. Cummings. Roll call?
In light of that motion, I'd like to point out the misspelling of wordsmith district on the back page, just to follow up to make sure it gets caught before publication.
Yes.
We're going down that avenue. Bring it up.
Roll call.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Gieske,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Next, definition changes for vehicle impoundment and impound tow yard.
All right. The Planning Commission unanimously approved the definition changes for vehicle impoundment and impound tow yard at the public hearing on August 7, 2018. Your packet contains a memorandum from the Township Zoning Administrator, as well as a detailed, highlighted version of the changes to the definition language within Ordinance 165. The proposed ordinance sections were sent to the county, on August 8th, 2018, and after a 30-day wait, there were no objections to the definition amendments.
Comments?
I'd just like to comment that efforts of the Planning Commission took to get this to this point because it was a bit of a deadline. We wanted to have it to this board by the 10th, which meant we had a reading in our regular Planning Commission on the 6th. Then we held a special meeting on the 7th to vote on that. And then the next day it was sent to the county where then you have to wait 30 days, which now puts it at September 8th roughly. So it was a real time crunch to get it to this meeting. So just for background on how all this went about, we went through a lot of hoops to make this happen.
That's awesome.
Yep, good job on the planning commission for getting that taken care of. Any other comments? Is there a motion?
I'll move to approve the changes to the definitions of vehicle impound, impoundment, and impound tow yard for the ordinance 165.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Palmer, support by Ms. McGuire. Roll call?
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Gasky,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Next informational, this is put in just for discussion amongst the board. For the Iosco Exploration Trail, additional funding needs for the Phase 3 portion of the project. This portion extends from the Oscoda schools, follows generally Long River Road, and ends at the far end of Old Orchard Park. There is a shortfall of $600,000 because this year the FLAP grant is not available to us. Last time we did this, the FLAP grant filled in that gap. So the state is looking to get us some additional funding, but they want the municipality to have a little more stake in the game for them to fill in the remainder of the gap. No guarantees from the state, but if we provide an obligation for additional funding into it, then they will more strongly consider providing us the additional funding.
How much has Oscoda alone contributed, just in money, not in time, but in money, toward this project?
For the Phase 3 portion of the project, we already have $100,000 into it, and the county has $50,000.
And when the project is all done, what would our total be?
Depending on how much the board wants to put into it, if we were to do an additional $100,000, then our total would be $200,000.
Okay, so it's a little bit 100,000 is the total, okay, got it.
So if the state can fill in the remainder, then we will receive a total of about $2 million
I see.
between the state and federal grants.
For comparison's sake, on phase 1, what was the
Total contribution from Asable, the county, and Oscoda was $150,000, which is what we're at right now without Asable in it because they're not part of Phase 3.
Mhm.
And then we received $2.1 million from the federal and state for that amount.
Aaron, this, the FLAP grant, audience, that's Federal Land Acquisition Program grant. But it's not available this year. Do you have any information? Is it going to return in
Should return in 2020.
2020?
Is the state already planning to jog the construction so that we maybe don't get everything finished next year? What is the plan from the state's viewpoint?
From Phase 3, the construction will more than likely occur in 2020. Phase 1 should be completed next year.
Right.
county about contributing some additional funds for phase 3. And I sort of know the answer to that question, but they have proposed a millage for Parks and Rec. And I'm wondering if that would have an influence on their participation, if that millage were to pass. Just
Another thing, possibly, potential the state might do this. What happens in the general election coming in November, and they change all these people in Lansing, and then they say, forget about it. Where does that leave us? Hanging.
Yeah, then we probably have to drop the project.
What a shame that this dotted line trail around the state, right? You know? Pavement here and off-roading there, you know, that'd be a shame.
I've mentioned a couple times, with the park planning that we've done recently, I wouldn't mind seeing the township budget for some substantial money to go towards development of those parks, so we're not reliant totally on grants and waiting for those to come in and stretching out the time frame. So if we were to do this, and then this were the first installment of that kind of an approach, I would be open to that potentially. Because with the park development, we've talked about in the strategic planning meetings recently, I get it's a long-range plan, just in essence, or by virtue of what we're doing, but it's so long, relying only on grants is just, doesn't seem too realistic or feasible to me.
I agree with that. And if we do decide to obligate additional funding, then this would be for 2020, not 2019.
I would just say that there are some very large foundations, some big money outfits across the state that have put money into the various sections of the Iron Belt Trail. So to think that change in the election in November would drop this Iron Belt program entirely, I think probably is very unlikely. Very unlikely. There's an awful lot of money that's been spent on this already,
Yeah.
and a lot more money that's planned for spending. Obviously, not here in our backyard, but throughout the state. That there's some very large foundations that have put backing behind a lot of this. So the idea that would all be for naught, that the idea of this continuous trail would be broken, to me, I think that's, not to say it couldn't, but I think it's quite unlikely. Very unlikely. And I would like to, quite honestly, I think that the county should have a little more of a hand in this. It's
Yeah.
you know, it goes through the entire county, all these phases, and I would at least, you're suggesting drafting an Air Force letter to ask for 500,000, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Talking to the county can't be any worse than that, so I would think that we at least make that proposal, see where they're at. And like I said, their park millage could not be passed.
Can I add one thing? The road commission are being pressured through the state also that they take more of a percentage of their Act 51 funding to go towards non-motorized trails. So it might be beneficial to even contact the Oscoda County Road Commission to see if they have any program in place to start upping their ante or their percentage. It's not mandatory by the state yet, by MDOT, but they're starting to get more and more pressure to increase their participation in non-motorized and taking their traditional Act 51 funding that they get and put it towards that.
Just to understand that point, does that mean that money allocated for roads and road maintenance is ultimately being reduced?
Shifted.
Shifted, thank you.
Not necessarily,
Okay.
because they they're also looking from the state legislature and all that stuff to if more road commissions look to this, they're looking at sending more of a local share to the road commissions through Act 51. So it's not, again, it's not definite yet, but they are getting more and more pressure to do it. And traditionally, they're supposed to, over a 5-year period, I think it's 10% of their Act 51 is supposed to go to non-motorized funding anyway. And now the state is trying to push that more, again, through legislation and all that stuff. But because that was one of the first things the road commissions came back saying, well, the general public's not going to like it if we take a percentage away from the road construction projects. And that's where they said, no, we're looking at eventually funding it more.
Do we need to vote on this or just discuss it?
No, we need to discuss. I need to know where the board is at regarding this, so we'll know what to bring forward at our next meeting.
My opinion would be that I'd like to see us continue and finish this project, but I'd like to keep all of our options open without committing ourselves to putting our own money on the table on this one. We've already put enough money on our own.
And this is only going to Old Orchard Park,
This covers 5.8 miles.
from the school to the park.
I think that's the most critical portion
It
of
is.
our
It is.
path, is getting from Old Orchard Park
Into town.
to the shoreline.
Into town.
That's right.
West of there,
If everything else
So what?
fails from the state after that, we've at least got that
that far.
as a success for us.
Right, yeah, so the people coming to Old Orchard have a way to get to the park, to hit the beach. Right, so, yeah.
I think it's critical. I think it's similar to what we talked about with the water main, where we, township's willing to back the difference, the lack of money that's short in the million. I think the same thing should apply for this bike path. I think this bike path is critical for, especially, like I said, phases 1 and 3, bring the traffic from Old Orchard Park. I know the school is really psyched up about having phase 1. The kids pedaling bikes back and forth from town to school, have a place on the side of the road. Right, so, I would like to see us, look for whatever money we can. Talk to the county, talk to whoever we need to talk to, but I think we need to try and fund this out, if we can, to make it happen in 2020.
So my feeling is if the township obligates $100,000 for 2020, we get additional money from the county, then that will further help the state in wanting to give us more money. But if we're stopping and waiting for somebody like the county to give us money,
Oh, no, I would never say stop and wait for the county. Good Lord, that phrase will lend us all to.
I think it's like the water main extension. We'll go ahead and say we're gonna back it, but we're gonna look for other funding sources in the meantime.
Yeah.
The same would apply with this.
What kind of time frame is it? We're talking about 2020 construction.
Yeah.
How long do we have before we have the rubber meets the road and
we have,
we're done looking for action?
we have, I think within the next 6 weeks, that we have to have something that solidifies to the TAP grant that we have the remaining funds. The TAP grant is holding until they know that we can fill that gap.
Is that a full-on commitment or an indication are they looking for?
They're looking for a commitment.
Full-on commitment.
And the TAP grant is Transportation Alternatives Program. So, you go with proceeding that way or a different way?
What other way would there be?
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to go forward with obligating $100,000 and then also seeking funds from the county.
Well, I'm even keeping options open for thinking beyond that as well. We've got an idea here possibly with the
Of course.
MTA. And, so yeah.
But as far as the township's cash obligation,
Right, we're obligated now.
Okay, I guess when I was thinking I would, be able to reduce the township's obligation with the help of the county or with the help of MTA.
We'll have to add on to it.
I'm sorry, not MTA.
Yeah, I think anything at 100,000 or less is, if we got 150 or 200,000 additional, I think that would get the state very motivated.
Motivated to do what?
But trying to switch and say,
To give the money, to grant the money.
yeah, the grant that to remain here.
So us saying we'll put up 100,000 isn't.
It's not for sure, but it's going to help them decide whether they do want to fill that gap or
So we're gonna obligate 50,000 a year for the next 2 years,
not. No,
2019, 2020.
we already have 100,000 for the project. We would be obligating an additional 100,000 for phase 3, for a total of 200,000 of township
By
funds.
By when in 2020?
What, depending on the project completion date, whether that's going to be the end of 2020 or sometime 2021.
Just looking at the budget.
So, as I'm thinking this through, so I look at the money generated from Old Orchard to the point of the, the beauty of that long strip from Old Orchard to the school, and over in phase 1, getting us to the state, Oscoda Beach. I actually think 100,000 sounds like a lot of money, and it is, but it's a small amount that we make every year, just in 1 year. From that location, I think I mentioned in a strategic planning meeting that we're getting close to making almost $1 million a year out of Old Orchard.
Gross.
Right. Fine, gross, fine. We're generating that much revenue. 10% to invest in service facilities, to invest in something that's going to be directly experienced by the people who come to that park. I think that's a development opportunity. Just strengthens that. I'm not saying yeah, just throw it money to the wind. I'm saying I think it's not a bad decision. It has merit.
Okay, so then I'll bring a resolution forward the next meeting. Okay, next resolutions we have for truth and taxation.
All right, so the assessor went into detail about the truth and taxation meeting, or I'm sorry, the public hearing, and this resolution would put into effect the maximum millage rate for the township.
Comments?
I think it only makes sense to, if we, what the maximum we're allowed, there are restrictions on how much we can tax, so it would make sense to have the maximum allowable amount. It's not a lot of money to begin with. Go on. How much did you say that?
11,000. Well, yeah. $1.99 per 100,000. We would get $11,000 more.
Mr. Byer, you mentioned something before about the millage rate of the Tawases. What was that amount?
Boy, I'd hate to say it, you probably know, and I think board members know, that incorporated cities can tax at a much higher rate. I want to say 16, but believe me, I would need to check on that. But it's considerably higher than what we can do. Yeah. That's the best I can come up.
Yeah, I remember something like that too, somewhere around there between 15, 16.
Double digit.
Okay. All right, is there a motion?
I'll move to approve resolution 2018-20 to restore the maximum allowable millage rate.
Support. Motion by Mr. Palmer, support by Mr. Cummings. Roll call?
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Gieske,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Next, a resolution for Oscoda Township DDA oversight.
All right, so this is the result of the joint meetings between the Township Board and the DDA Board, and this is the culmination of my notes and putting forward all of the different action items to be considered by the Township Board. You have 9 of them in front of you there, so this is for discussion purposes, and it was determined that we would put this in front of the Township Board for discussion and determine if modifications needed to be necessary.
So in our work session on Friday, several questions came up regarding this resolution. I think we probably need to rewrite some things, get some answers to some questions, and present at the next meeting, but are there any other comments from the board regarding this?
I don't know what you're going to rewrite, not being there Friday or any Fridays. I think a lot of this is a little bit of overkill, the need for a resolution. The reason I'm saying that is the 8 years that I was supervisor and then the 2 years since then, total of roughly 10 years, there's always been the supervisor. For a long time, it was Bob Stalker. It was Bob and Jim and Martin for 8 years. Martin, you go back even before that, right? And a lot of times, if there was something crazy going on, we had the ability to bring it to the board's notice. If we didn't, shame on us. And in the 2 years since, the names have changed, but it's 2 of them have. For a while it was Bob and Martin and Aaron, and then it was Dave and Martin and Aaron. And I don't recall seeing a lot of reports during township meetings about what was going on, or if there were some serious concerns about what the DDA was doing. Like I said, if the 3 people that sit on that board, or they don't, the superintendent does not have a vote, but the superintendent is there and contributes a lot to it. Bob Stalker would say, I don't know if you can do this, I'll check with the township attorney. I've worked with Bob for 16 years, something like that, and if he says he's going to check with the township attorney, I think he does. I trust that he does that, or did that in his tenure. So I think we've had numerous chances to oversee the DDA, and if we didn't, like I said, shame on us, but that can be ratcheted up, I would imagine, just under the old system. I think this is, especially some of the items, I refer particularly to 5, 6, and 7 that deal with, DDA has to provide their own secretary to take notes, and treasurer and all expenses associated with where in that aspect of the operation. Number 7, if the township provides any in-kind services to the DDA, it shall only be pursuant to a written understanding as it relates to the scope of services and the compensation to the township for same. Paul Bunyan Festival, I think that's a Chamber of Commerce function. I know we put up fences for them, maybe block off streets, provide some police protection. I don't know, do we charge them for that? How about the Christmas parade, 4th of July, fireworks, workers to set up traffic blocks on side streets for the parade and so forth. We don't charge the Chamber of Commerce for that, and they're not even a subcomponent of the township. Again, third time. This resolution has a lot in it that I think is big time overkill. And, so, if we were to vote on it tonight without any changes, I, again, have no idea what changes you're talking about here. I look forward to finding out those. But I would be a no vote tonight on this if we voted tonight. End of speech.
Two changes I had suggested Friday, just to clarify and make everyone aware, were numbers 2 and 3. So 2 is any DDA expenditure over the amount of $2,000 must only be incurred after approval of the township board. I definitely want to see it at least would like to see it at least modified, if not removed, but certainly the limit I think is low, and that was discussed. Wasn't just myself, I don't think. And then number 3 was the DDA will increase funding up to the authorized 2 mills. To me, I would like to not see that included in the resolution and leave that up to the DDA to recommend to the township, and then we could give the opinion of the township board. But those are the 2 I'd like to see removed. And then the only other qualification or thought I had was on number 7 with the word compensation. I don't mind solidifying the understandings and relationship between the township and the DDA on certain functions and things. I just want to make sure that that word compensation doesn't mean that every transaction requires compensation. Some may, in my mind, require financial compensation, but I don't think all would, similar to the things Mr. Byer referenced with other entities. So those are my thoughts from Friday.
I think to your point on that, John, it says that pursuant to a written understanding, which my interpretation of that is that we would have a written understanding with the DDA if there was going to be compensation for various activities, that would be sort of negotiated between the 2 boards and worked out ahead of time, so everybody knows in advance what's going to be charged for, if anything. The only point I would like to make in regard to all of this is to remind everybody that after January 1st, with the enactment of Public Act 57, there's going to be new reporting requirements that have never been in place before. The new reporting requirements are going to go directly through the Department of Treasury, which is the state's IRS, basically. So where before the reports were going to the State Tax Commission, which typically didn't really look at much of anything, whereas the Treasury, I can virtually guarantee, will take a much more active role in looking at the reports that are coming from the DDA and from the township as well. So not that, there's anything wrong or that there'll be a problem or anything like that. Just to be aware that after January 1st, we have to make sure that we have all of our ducks in a row and we have everything aligned where it should be as it relates to the DDA. Well, we're talking about the DDA, so as it relates to the DDA, but also in all of our other funds that we have in operation that will be looked at under a entirely different light after January 1st. So I just wanted to remind everybody that there's going to be a different scrutiny of things after January 1st as it relates to the DDA. That's my 2 cents.
Anything else?
I do have a question. It's a follow-on to what Bill was just talking about. From the conversations that occurred between the Township Board and the DDA Board, and the notes that were used to create this. My question is, does this mean that this is some kind of a mutual representation here? Or is it something that the township board is trying to enact? Just
Township board.
Good. Okay. Good. All right, that's fine. Be clear.
And for clarity as well, this doesn't, there's been a lot of talk leading up to this about incorporation. This resolution doesn't speak to incorporation at all.
No.
So even after Friday, I've still, in my mind, adopting this resolution is sufficient. It strengthens some things and codifies some things as has been talked about. It stops short of incorporation, which is okay by me. But just for clarity going forward, I'm wondering what, where we're headed here, what the intention is. If we're not going to do this tonight, what direction we're going in here. If this, because with this being the only thing in the board packet, when I first read the packet, it seemed this was it. We were not, that incorporation was left off the table. So.
Incorporation, it was early last week that I learned of a state Supreme Court case where a DDA was being sued, and in the case, the municipality was also held liable for that case because in their determination, they found the two entities were linked together too much. And one of the comments made was, had the DDA had articles of incorporation, that could have helped in determining that the municipality may not have been a party to the outcome of that lawsuit. Since I'm elected to represent, all of us are represented to elect the entire township, all 130 some miles of it, square miles of it, not just the downtown area. I'm going to look at a risk assessment. I'm going to determine what's in the best interest of the township, what's going to protect the township the most. And if the DDA were to face a $7 million lawsuit, does the township need to be a party to that and pay into that? And I say no, because they are, by the act, a public body corporate. And they need to be responsible for the things they do under themselves. For them having their own secretary and treasurer, that's already provided for in their bylaws. I've sat on other boards, and in those boards, we all had the positions, secretary, treasurer, and such, and each one of those people did the jobs they were assigned to do. And I think that's what every entity should do. They should take care of all that themselves.
So with this new Act 57, the need or the discussion point about the DDA incorporating is no longer necessary. I just need to understand. I'm not fluid in my understanding of the act. I haven't read it. So does that change? Does that act in your understanding of it in this court case that came down last week from the Supreme Court of Michigan? Did that change it in some way, or how did that?
No.
Okay.
There is no requirement for them to have articles of incorporation.
Okay.
But it's just the risk of if they don't.
Right.
The township has the possibility of paying a large sum for a DDA court case.
Right.
And I don't find that fair to the people who live on the other side of the township.
That's a fair point. That's a viewpoint. I understand. I mean, and so you're talking about being a supervisor, and I'm sitting here as a trustee, where I'm responsible. We four of us are responsible for the financial viability and oversight. So I get what you're saying. Different tax on the same objective. From my way of looking at it, I just want to mitigate well, frankly, I want to remove all future potential of the situation, the danger that occurred ultimately with the artisan market, where we acquired a debt onto our balance sheet without really knowing we were inheriting that. It was the whole June 4th or thereabouts meeting that, you know, that we had as a workshop on that Friday. Bob was still here, and I remember bringing it up. And I think that's the thing that I want to make sure that we handle as a township, because that's a financial viability problem. If I've got a hole the size of a semi in our policies and procedures that permit that kind of an event to occur, and we have no recourse as a board of trustees of the township here, I don't know what else to do. So if this resolution helps secure our authority over that to prevent that from happening, I understand it. And I would be good with that. I also understand, some of the points that Jim pointed out is, that he had concerns or questions about, but I also look at them and say, well, having been on boards as well, I'm not concerned about treasurers who are members of a group be a treasurer and act like a treasurer and do like a treasurer or a secretary. That's what the position calls for. So I don't really have a problem with that. And I don't think that there's anything particularly onerous about anything in this this list of items. I guess to your point, John, the amount about the $2,000 maximum limit, I guess I feel kind of the same way. It could be $3,000 or something. I mean, I'm not set in stone on the $2,000 number, but I certainly understand its purpose, because we're trying to make sure that we have some insight into where the expenditures are going. That's it. I mean, I can see the concept here. Yeah, that's it. So, Jim?
Yes. I mean to say this calmly and not in combative manner. And I remember back in June where you showed great concern about the artisan market and DDA in general. You were quite excited at that meeting. But in that same meeting, you had said, we're getting close to a grand opening for the artisan market, and I hope that it isn't opened in a cloud, a dark cloud, to inhibit the glory of the occasion at all. And I simply said to you, I didn't say you were wrong. I simply said, if the opening comes about soon, you show the concern and negativity about it that you are here this day in June, that will provide the cloud. That's what I said. But here, a few weeks ago, you, at one of our meetings here, picked me out as saying, I had said you were wrong. Jim Byers said I was wrong at the time. I didn't say you were wrong. I just said, if you're concerned about a nice, clean, sunny day opening of the artisan market, chill out a little bit. I maybe was wrong there, but I didn't say you were wrong. And I didn't respond when you nailed me here 2 or 3 weeks ago. I just sat there and listened.
Okay, fair enough.
So I guess my question is, will the discussion and decision on writing articles of incorporation of the DDA be discussed at a different time? Because that really doesn't relate to this. Is that correct? My understanding.
It does if it gets added to the resolution.
It's not part of the resolution now.
Not the current one.
Okay. Because
there was some wording in this resolution that was a little troubling to me, if we were to go forward with the Articles of Incorporation, because on page 1, the bottom where it says, whereas in furtherance of legal authority, the township is acknowledged by both the DDA as well as the township board, that the DDA is a subcomponent of and therefore answerable to the township board. It seems to me that wording would be in conflict with writing Articles of Incorporation.
No, because the relationship between the DDA and the township will always exist. The question is to what degree. So just like a parent company owns a child company, they're separate companies, but the child company reports to the umbrella parent company. There's a relationship there. So by state law, we can never have a DDA that isn't in any way whatsoever.
Sure.
So there you have the point about what I'm saying here. We're simply reducing the amount of, or limiting, or defining them as separate entities. That's all. So this way here, you know, when you do that, you actually provide it a little bit of kind of a growing up kind of a thing. You can go and be what you want to be. You can do what you want to do. You're kind of beholden primarily to yourself when you're incorporated like that, right? But we wouldn't be the end all responsible party in a negative event of some sort or another, like one of these that Aaron had described. So, you know, I like the fact that there's an increase in funding here because, from what I understand, it's needed.
The Act also requires the municipality to have a certain level of oversight over the DDA.
Sure.
Right.
So that's inevitable. But I think how that oversight is specifically related between our DDA and Township Board needs to be defined further, hopefully through their bylaws.
Yep. And to that point, you're referring to things like, you know, coordinating or cooperating or working with whatever the terms are of let's say, the planning board or such and such, because that came up in the discussion. And I get that. I understand. It's okay. I mean, I kind of feel like this is just I feel like we're not, I am personally at this point not here to try to say that something is horribly wrong and we got to fix this. I'm not banging on the table like I was 2-3 months ago, which I admit to, Jim. I do. I was quite upset. Because at that point, none of these pieces of information were known. We didn't have resolution on whether we had articles yet. We thought there were. So many things have happened since June 4th. It's hard to believe how much has happened since then. So from that entire reaction that I had, which was based on, as I called it, my spidey senses, because that's all I had. None of us on this board had more. You know, I'm sitting here and saying, okay, I get it. You know, I don't think this is a matter of everybody's running around trying to be subversive or, gosh, whatever, fill in the blank with whatever word you want, you know. I don't think that's the case. I think what we're trying to do is I want the organization to survive. I want it to exist. I want it to live to its fullest and provide the DDA district as well as the township and all the people who drive through it all that it can offer. You know, the beautification, the businesses that are thriving. I want it to happen. And I think that if this kind of resolution helps enable that, that's great. Provide them some independence and at the same time some better understanding of what level of cooperation we hope as a board to have with them. I think that's all a great definition.
The Airport Authority has Articles of Incorporation. Our Senior Center Building Authority has Articles of Incorporation.
The The airport authority, or the LDFA?
Airport. So I think if they're on a separate line with the oversight provided for in the Act 57, they can do what they need to do.
Yeah.
With an increase in funding, which they can actually start to do something more.
That'd be awesome.
Because if the DDA has more to work with and can put more into the downtown, then those property owners are going to reap, theoretically, a higher return than what they're putting into it.
Yeah.
But as long as they don't have that extra in there, they will forever be stifled. Okay, so do you want to engage this resolution now or at the next board meeting after some modifications?
You're talking about modifications, but those modifications include writing articles of incorporation for the DDA? Is that?
Do we have consensus from this board regarding that?
Let's make a motion and find out. That's what I'm true about.
Well, I will tell you that in my opinion, originally, I thought that the DDA should have articles of incorporation. The statute language calls for body corporate. My understanding, and this is only from my personal experience with my corporation, it was explained very clear to me how I had to operate a corporation, what I had to do, what had to be done, the cost that was involved with all that. It was very clear. Since then, I've in research found that articles of incorporation for a municipal board is not necessarily required. And then after our discussions with the DDA and their feelings about, well, you know, it's been working for a long time, the way it's been going, and that's, I mean, nobody here can argue with that.
Sure.
It's been working for a long time. The only thing that I would point to is, and I'm going to repeat, is that there's going to be a different lens looking at how things are operated now, starting in January. And I was kind of falling back saying, well, you know, maybe we don't need to have the articles of incorporation. Maybe we can just have it a subcommittee of the township board. But then after I had a conversation with Mr. Ippert about this, and when I found out that he was willing to write the articles of incorporation for free, not to have any, and I called him to ask him about that specifically, because my feeling is, if you can get an attorney to do some work for free, he must have some pretty strong feelings about that they're important. And so I contacted him to ask him that very question. He said, yes, I think they are very important. And it could potentially limit liability of the township down the road. Not to say that there necessarily would be. And then, when I heard the outcome of that Supreme Court, the Michigan Supreme Court case that held the township accountable for a $7 million lawsuit, then I'm kind of swinging back to where I think we do need to have the articles of incorporation to make sure that, through the eyes of the state, the DDA is definitely a body corporate in the eyes of the statute. So that's kind of where I stand on it right now.
I still don't think that, I understand where you're coming from, but the size of our DDA, and if we have better controls over them, I think that's going to limit our liability as well. I don't think it's necessary, even if the attorney is going to write them for free.
Is there a downside to the articles of incorporation being done?
Cost, better cost. I think they'll end up having to deal with their own CPA and tax filing. They wouldn't do it through us. If they want, they would actually have to maintain a annual or possibly a biannual meeting, you know, that they register in their little corporate book that they need to maintain, that formally says what they're planning to do and what they did over the year, and that keeps everything kind of, you know, just tidy. I mean, I'm trying to think. As they're a government, it would be a government corporation. It's not an S corp or a C corp like I'm familiar with. So probably even would it be a 501(c)(3)? I don't even know. I don't even know what it would be. I'm not sure if it'd be a nonprofit. I don't know.
My concern would be limiting or crippling the DDA into ineffectiveness or non-existence. That's what I'm weighing here. I see what you're saying about the liability, and I get it, and I recognize it. But to answer your question, that's what I weigh. That's what I'm.
And how would the articles of incorporation limit their effectiveness?
Not by well, and I suppose you're right, because I suppose the true nature of this is that they are going to be distanced so far that they're going to have extra financial requirements on them, whether or not we have articles of incorporation. So the articles may not have a bearing on that ultimately, because I think whether it's been fully addressed in totality, I think that's the direction we're heading, is an isolation to the degree that they're going to have added expenses that are going to weigh on them heavier, with or without the articles. So your question there what I think you're getting at may be accurate. There may not be a difference with the articles passed or not.
I don't see a downside. I see an upside if it limits our township's liability. And that Supreme Court case clearly points to that. It doesn't matter the size of the entity. You can have a lawsuit from anybody at any time, and I think this board should, as best we can, protect the township as a whole to limit possible liabilities. And I mean, this would do that. I think the DDA is a viable entity here. I think recapturing the additional 2 mills gives them some additional money to do some things, and I don't see the downside for having, especially if there's not a fee involved with having them drafted. I think that the township board and the DDA are still going to work together.
Have to.
You know, we prepare the budget. I mean, we do have some interaction.
We got
Their budget, yes, but we approve it.
any negatives for articles?
I didn't know that was a topic tonight, so I guess I'm not prepared.
Should we table this for now and for our next meeting?
Yeah, and in the meantime, if we do that, can you get me or the board, if they desired also, a copy of this court case you've referred to a couple times?
That's what we're waiting for. And the published opinion for the court case probably won't be available for a few more months.
So where do you hear about this? Just TV or?
This came through a communication with our attorney.
Our?
Is there anything?
Okay.
Is there?
This was a Michigan Supreme Court that just came down recently.
Can what came to the attorney be passed along, or was it just verbal? Or?
That's what I asked about on,
I
think it was
you
Friday.
referenced it. Yeah, I know you mentioned it.
Well, someone mentioned that the fact that the attorney is going to work on these articles of incorporation for free is a sign that he really wants them or likes them or thinks they're necessary. In my mind, maybe I'm paranoid here or something, but I think that would also indicate that our attorney is not neutral on this. And so that's what, if he verbally passed on some information or his summary or synopsis of a court case, I don't know if I'd accept that 100%, because I think he has a point of view. He is not neutral on this.
I don't know what neutral I don't know what neutral would look like. If I was to run a red light and needed an attorney to help me with that red light, running the red light traffic ticket, I think he'd be trying to help me one way or another, right? There wouldn't be a offense involved. It would be, what do you mean by neutral?
I think he really is bound and determined to come up with the corporate angle.
And what would be wrong with that?
I'm not sure. That's why I'm asking for a little more information.
Because I see the attorney trying to protect the interests of the township.
Okay.
Well, he stated that at our joint meeting. He said his loyalties are with this township board, not with the DDA specifically. His interests are in protecting the township board, or the township. That's, I mean, as an attorney, you have to pick one side or the other. You can't be the plaintiff and the defendant at the same time, so you have to pick one. Not that we're pitting the DDA as a plaintiff or defendant.
And we've already seen a legal opinion that I provided a month ago regarding in the village of Chelsea, where it was also stated, articles of incorporation, or about the separation. The more separation between the DDA and the municipality, the less liable the municipality is.
Right.
Again, we've got to protect our municipality, because that's what we're elected to do. So that's why I'm wondering, what are the downsides of an article of incorporation? What sort of alternative agenda would there be that would somehow cause this to be somehow negative to the DDA?
Yeah, 25 years ago, when my CPA advised to me that I should incorporate, I didn't think it was an untoward, covert attack on me in some way, and it's done nothing but help me since.
Apples to oranges to me, though.
I don't know if all these examples, yourself, Bill, you're talking about incorporation for private businesses and companies, apply to a situation like this. You know, I don't know if we're doing the apples to apples thing here or not. I don't know, but I wonder.
Well, two things were pointed out to me as a corporation, two advantages that I had were in taxes and liability. I mean, it's that simple. And if you read the statute where it says that BDA is a body corporate that can sue and be sued, what that means is that for a corporation, the corporation is sued, not the individual. And in this case, it would be the DDA, not the township board. To me, that's a big difference. That's an important difference to understand and take into consideration.
And for me, I get that. That makes sense to me. That has registered here. I want to make that clear. I just am concerned about doing this in a way and in the best way possible, so that if we do remove the DDA out from under the township, because we've established at this point that they are part of us currently. So that's what makes this a bit of a tricky situation, is we're not just incorporating and protecting ourselves as an individual was. We're removing a part of ourselves and putting them on the outside, but I get that for liability purposes. But that's where I don't see the apples to apples comparison with different situations. I want to make sure that we do this in a way that, and it's been mentioned here tonight, sets the DDA up to succeed. And I want to make sure that we as a board are doing everything we can to do that. And again, I go back to that. That's what I'm weighing here. That's the other side to this, to try and answer your question. That's because I'm looking at this certainly from protecting our municipality, And I'm also looking at this from what's best for our community. And it keeps getting brought up, comparing the resident at the very far west end of the township to the, anyone in the DDA, and I rankle at that notion because it keeps being portrayed as though we don't have a mind or care for them. And I take exception to that. I do. I'm looking at this from a community perspective, and I certainly include the residents in the west end of the township and that. So again, just to get back to, that's what I'm balancing the two things between what works best for us, for Oscoda as a whole. And I'm trying to navigate that. And I think we definitely need to make a decision. This has to be resolved here sometime soon. Obviously, we have the end of the year approaching, but just to get this over with, we gotta do something.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, one last thing, not to make myself instrumental in this, but I don't anticipate being here at the next meeting. That if this happens, then so be it. That's the way things go. That's my duty to be here, and I won't be. So, but just in transparency, awareness, I won't be here. I don't expect you guys to work around that.
Thanks.
So, on the other item regarding the amount to be incurred, expense of the DDA approved by the Township Board. If there's going to be articles of incorporation, I'm amenable to having that limit raised to $15,000. If there's not going to be articles of incorporation, then I don't think it should be more than $5,000.
Is having that limit, well, I retract that. I won't go down that road right now.
It's going to keep the board more aware of what the expenses of the DDA are, how things are progressing. Not right now. Thank you. So regarding a dollar threshold, what is the opinion?
So you're looking to change this document tonight?
Well,
I'm looking to get some ideas of what to do here. So if the board wants to progress with this document as it is, then somebody can throw out a motion. If they want to have some adjustments done, we can bring it forward to the board at the next meeting.
Well, that's actually how you opened it up. You said there were discussions at the Friday work session, which there was, and that's why we entered into this meeting thinking that this wasn't the version we were going to be approving. So that's what I thought.
That's the impression I got.
Yeah, that's what I got. So
Unless the board wants to approve.
fair enough, exactly. Fair enough.
So what's further input?
So I guess I'm not clear on what the question is about the $2,000 limit.
On item number 2.
Yeah, what's wrong with having $2,000?
I think it's too low. If you think 2,000 is fine, that's fine. I think that the limit should be raised. Unincorporated should probably be about 5,000. If you think it should be lower, then let us know.
I agree with you on this. I do.
5,000?
Yeah, I think this goes along with the limits that our own superintendent has to pay certain things. That's limited at $2,000. I think that's too low. So, I mean, this is kind of the same. I'm assuming that this 2,000 was based on that. I'm just guessing, but yeah, I think that's too low. I think it should be more than that. Especially if they're considered a body corporate, they're operating under their own powers.
If they're incorporated, there probably shouldn't be any statement of limit at all, in my opinion, because they're on their own.
I don't know.
That was my question, is if they are incorporated, does having a limit open the township to bring them back close together? Question. That's assuming an incorporation.
Right, well, so is the real question is the resolution should be drafted around the fact that it's gonna be articles of incorporation included? I mean, should that question be answered tonight before you sit here and do something and bring something back again in 2 weeks and we're still having this same discussion?
I agree. Looking for some consensus here.
Right, but to your point, Jamie, you were mentioning that it wasn't a point of discussion tonight to talk about whether incorporation was yes or no, I thought.
Right, that wasn't
So-
even on the table.
Right. So that's why I'm saying I'm not sure that that's something we can vote on tonight. I don't know if we're prepared to do that. You were mentioning you weren't prepared to do it or to make that decision. So I'm thinking maybe that's something we're gonna have to come back and deal with in another meeting. Right? I mean, otherwise, I'm not sure where to take it.
I mean, because at this point, like I said, I am not for the articles of incorporation.
Okay.
But without being able to answer Aaron's question, what's the downside or what's the upside, that type of thing, I can't address that tonight myself.
Okay.
Because that was not part of the packet.
And so what is the feeling on the dollar amount? I've gotten a few inputs.
I'm good with 5 then.
Raise it, yeah.
5. Yeah, it's fine. I thought it was low, but 5 would be fine.
Well, I think if there are articles of incorporation put in place, then it could be raised significantly higher than 5,000.
If needed.
If at all.
Eliminate it.
I suggested eliminating it, yeah.
Eliminate it.
Number 3 should be just gone. That would be totally up to them either way.
Yeah, especially if they were incorporated, otherwise it might not be. You know, if they're incorporated, that is up to them, how they generate the money.
I would like to say for number 3, for the 2 mills authorization, for that to be enacted on the tax bills for December, that has to be included on the township's 4029 that's due September 30th. So that's why that's on there, and we are up against that deadline for the end of September to be able to have that effective immediately. If not, that would be 2019.
Revenue.
Correct.
The 2 mills, Dave, would give them approximately how much more revenue?
Just under $28,000.
Right.
I agree. I think this should be removed. I don't think this should be a township initiated or dictated action. The DDA may be put in a position where they have to, but I don't think that should be us making that initiation.
Well, and I think they have to do that anyways.
You said it's the township's form, though.
Both boards would have to,
Sure,
Approve it.
but the initiation is.
Would have to come from the DDA, wouldn't it?
I just think it should.
Or both.
both boards would have to approve it. I don't believe the chronological order
Matters.
matters.
And for clarity's sake, the 2 mills, if they did increase it, would increase tax bills in the DDA.
Correct.
Correct.
All right. Is there any other comments on this?
The number 7, my screen went black. I can't get my computer to come back up. About
It provides any in-kind services.
the in-kind services. Not sure I'm real fond of the wording myself either there, because I think that you're going to have different instances along the way where, like, has been brought up that the chamber has, there might be other things going on with the DDA moving down the road that should be taken into consideration for the in-kind services on an item-by-item basis, I guess. I don't think that it can be completely hammered out in stone, but, I mean, I think we can get to the majority of it.
And I wouldn't mind adding to the point, to the concern around the word compensation. I don't think it means that there is compensation, but whatever the compensation is, meaning 0 is compensation, $1 is compensation. It doesn't specify that it's always got to be for gain to the township or something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just, and I think we've all, or for the most of us have weighed in on this, and it seems to me we all seem to agree for the most part. I just want to verbalize that so we all know where we're standing, and then potentially formalize it here just so that it's clear that it is a case-by-case compensation basis. It's not a guaranteed.
Yeah. I think that's the way it's written. It makes sense that,
Okay.
to me, and I think that's the way I would want it, like, you know.
Clarification for
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Okay, anything else? So, you're okay with rewording and bringing it back at the next board meeting?
Yep.
Okay.
Good with that. Yeah.
And we will work on that. So I make a motion, we postpone Resolution 2018-23 till the next board meeting.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Weed, support by Mr. Gajewski. Roll call?
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Gajewski,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. All right, final item. Zoning Board of Appeals appointment for Catherine Larrabee. So I received a letter of intent from Catherine Larrabee, who's requesting to be on the Zoning Board of Appeals. There is a slot open for an alternate. We would not be making a motion on her being an alternate. It would be the ZBA who would determine the alternate.
Really?
Who left?
We haven't had a ZBA alternate for a while.
I think Mr. Scholes was briefly for a time, and then a member rotated off.
That's right.
Took his
Okay.
place.
Any comments?
This is an honest question. Now, I have no ulterior motive on this, but is there a problem with a real estate person being on the zoning board of appeals? Is that a conflict, or could it be on some issues? Or
Feedback I have, it is not.
pardon me?
The feedback I have is that it's not.
The feedback comes from our attorney.
Correct.
Okay.
Are you suggesting we get another attorney or 2 attorneys to consult more?
No, I feel really inhibited on that when I talked about neutrality or lack thereof, because Aaron and the rest of the board, my main feelings come from a closed meeting, lawyer board meeting. I can't relay the details. So I'm shackled to explain why I question neutrality. I can't say any more than that. But I do have some reason for that. Okay. Some of you might remember, I should shut up, but I've never been reprimanded by an employee before, but I was that night. And if you remember what caused that, you can put that together. But it was a little crude.
Any other comments?
I would just like to point out how important our zoning board of appeals is. They are the one board that can override, to the benefit of a resident, the zoning ordinances we have in place. And that's quite important. And each member, there are 6 questions that have to be answered in the affirmative in order for a zoning appeal to be approved by the zoning board? 6 questions. I don't have all of them, but I know one of them is the problem that you're trying to overcome was that created by the resident. So in other words, if the resident does something that puts them in violation, then the zoning board can't approve that appeal. And there's 6 of those, so each member has to answer each one of those, and that's mandated by state law, that those 6 questions have to be answered in the affirmative by each member of the zoning board of appeals. And so being a realtor, I don't, now I would suspect that if it were her customer that were involved, she may recuse herself from that. But you know, it's pretty clear the guidelines for approving a zoning board of appeal.
And I was not implying that. I just thought it was worth bringing up and asking about what's the board's feeling. And also, she would be 1 vote out of 5. So, but I thought it was worth questioning. Because a month from now or 2 months is too late.
Anything else? Is there a motion?
Is there a proposed term? With it?
This one is. This would be December 31st of 2020.
I'll make a motion to move to approve the appointment of Catherine Gavin Larrabee to the Zoning Board of Appeals for term ending 12/31/20.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Palmer, support by Ms. McGuire. Roll call?
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Gasky,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. All right, next we're on to our second public comment period. No cards are required. Anyone may speak. There is still a 4-minute time limit. When you come to the podium, please introduce yourself. Does anybody have anything they wish to speak?
Yeah. I guess I resent the fact that this was represented as a result of the meetings between the DDA and the Township Board, because the first time I laid eyes on this was this afternoon. And no other DDA members were able to lay their eyes on these recommendations until I passed them around to the rest of some of the Township Board that I could get a hold of. So to say that this was a result of the meetings between us is stretching things a little bit, because we never saw it.
Does anybody else wish to speak? All right, then we're on to board comments. Does anybody have anything?
I got one thing that I'm a little confused on. On the truth and taxation, we went back to 0.03 blank blank township wide and come up with $11,000. And we have 1 mile of the DDA for 2 mills, we come up with $26,000, $28,000. Doesn't seem like it adds up right. It's confusing me.
You talking 0.3 mil versus
0.03 mils gets us back to 4.6908. We were at 4.6509. but that only gives us 0.03 few cents difference, and that's township wide, correct?
So the total taxable value is just under 14 million. If you take that 14 million
All right,
and
now it
multiply.
makes sense. Now it makes sense. All right.
Okay, any other comments?
I wasn't at the meeting, two of the meetings with the DDA, and I'm confused now, because during this meeting, I was led to believe that what we were discussing here tonight regarding the DDA was an outcome of those meetings. And I heard you say that these were based on your notes. So I'm just wondering, does anybody have some information to fill this in? Because I'm utterly confused that the president, chairman of the DDA is standing up there saying he doesn't know what we're talking about.
I at least have something to say about it, whether
Okay, fair enough.
what it turns out to be. But
Oh,
I recognize that resolution as what, at the very end of the meeting, DDA members referenced, their opinions of the situation, what they would maybe prefer to see, or their opinion of the structure and relationship between the township and the DDA.
Okay.
And then there was some discussion regarding a summary. Okay, what different scenarios have we covered? What aspects to those scenarios have we covered? And there was a list at the top of it was incorporation. It kind of went off on a tangent, and all these bullet points of different things covered. And I believe that resolution presented tonight was a compilation of that list. I recognize that to be the result of the meeting. I also recognize that the DDA was not probably given a copy, but that resolution, and there was some discussion about reciprocal resolutions, but that resolution put forth tonight was for the township board to act on, and thus was included in the township board's packet. So I don't see a problem or an inconsistency in the approach there. I recognize that the DDA was not provided it, and I could see where them having it would be helpful. But I don't recognize a problem with what was presented tonight, or it being an inaccurate summary of the meeting.
Okay.
That's what my input is.
Thank you.
And these were publicly available Thursday evening.
Yeah, which is when
Sure.
we get them ourselves.
And I will say I think they're accurate in whole.
Okay.
Certainly, there was a lot of stuff going around, so certainly a perception of a minor detail may be different in someone's opinion than the other. We didn't summarize them all, but for the vast majority of those things, I recognize them to be accurate.
Okay. Very well, thank you for that.
And I think it's not to keep going when I'm done, but I think it's a tall task to do that. So it was wide-ranging discussion that day, and it's a convoluted and complex, and it grows by the meeting. So.
Nice. Yeah.
Any other comments?
Thanks, John.
What are you looking at me for?
Oh, no, you look like you're about ready to- Everybody pay their taxes.
Yeah.
It's usually
Taxes are due September 14th. Summer taxes anyways.
All right. Then I need a motion to adjourn. We are adjourned. Thanks for coming out.